space race, which I must mention because I'm a space enthusiast, and I'll close. The Soviet Union put the first satellite in orbit. We announced, well, we're going to put a satellite up in 1958. Well, they beat late in 1957, and the first satellite they put up was a huge one. The thing we put up was a tiny one. All right, you might think, hey, they got us beat. They're bigger than we are. Well, the fact that we could cram a whole lot more into a small space meant that technologically we were ahead of them from the beginning. Also, now then, they wound up, they put the first man in orbit. And I had a lady at Lockheed say, give them credit. They did get to the orbit before we did. Yeah, here's how I give them credit for it. I give them all the credit I can give a cheat. Now again, if you know any better, if you're welcome to say so once I'm through. Why do I call them cheats? All right, here's what they did. They sent 8 cosmonauts into orbit and lost all 8. The 9th one was Gagarin. They got the 9th one up and the 9th one back down. Then they announced to the world, we put a man in orbit. Well, the question is, did Gagarin ever go to orbit? Oh yeah, we're certain now because the United States was monitoring it all along. Gagarin actually went in orbit. He almost died. But we have a recording. For instance, they once sent 2 cosmonauts, 1 man and 1 woman, and the woman's voice is recorded by an Italian ham operator, ham radioman, who said, the world will never know about us. We're gone. There was another case, the same ham operator picked up a heartbeat. He took the heartbeat recording to a doctor, and the doctor said, this is the heartbeat of a dying man. They would send us pictures of the cosmonaut, they called them cosmonaut, they'd send pictures of the cosmonaut team, and they'd brag, this is our best cosmonaut, and one day this cosmonaut's picture disappeared from their pictures. We asked them, where's cosmonaut so-and-so? And they changed the story, what happened to him 3 times. We now know he was sent into orbit and perished. But their story was, he got involved in a drunken brawl and died in a motorcycle wreck on his way home. Then the next know he died in an automobile crash, or he died in training. But actually, we now know, years later, they sent us records of the 8 persons they lost in orbit. All right. They'd send their men up there, and their women, lose them, and they wouldn't announce they'd sent them until after they finally got one up and back down the line. Now, we played by different rules. In the long run, they lost. In the short run, they got to orbit before we did. All right, I did say it. And this is April. I recall reading a weekly reader when I was 12 years old and said, you will tell your grandchildren. I'm not a grandfather yet. Said, you will tell your grandchildren. I remember April 1961. That was the time when the first human orbited the Earth. Well, most of us have forgotten about it, but I thought, well, I'm going to hold that thought, and maybe someday I'll be a grandfather. I was 12 years old at the time. Well, this is now April of 2014, and guess who went to the moon? We did, they haven't. All right, anybody have any comments? Am I being hard on their program? I mean, after all, I want to tell you, they did get the first satellite in orbit, but it was crude compared to ours. They did get the first man into orbit. They were the first nation to put 2 men in orbit in 2 separate capsules. Yes, but they never got to the moon. Now, that's not saying they won't. Fast forward to 2014, the United States manned space program is simply on hold. For us to send men to the space station, we have to use Russian equipment. We have to borrow, and we have to pay the Russians $80 million every time we send a man in orbit. That $80 million goes into the Russian pocketbook where they can hire engineers and scientists to build better rockets, better spacecraft. And one really rich man said, I want to go into orbit. The United States said no. The Russians said yes. He paid the Russians $20 million and said to the president, hey, the Russians are willing to take us in orbit, $20 million, and all that money goes to hiring more Russian engineers, Russian scientists. China has now gotten involved, and I fear unless the United States changes ways, between Russia and China, they're going to beat us in the space race. The space race is far from over now. Like I say, initially they got the first steps on us. Then we came back strong, and we got the second and third steps, you might say. But our space program is largely stalled. All right, you have any?
I was just going to say, what exactly is the space race?
there's
I've
not a
always been
space
confused
race
'cause it
going
seems
on
like-
now as such, except we're trying to cooperate with the Soviets, or the Russians.
But what's the end goal?
The end goal is, right now there's several. One of them is to build a space station, which has been started on. Robert Anson Heinlein told us many years ago that if you can get into Earth orbit, you're halfway to any place you want to go. The trick is, you see rockets, by the time they get into Earth orbit, they've shot up 2/3 of the rocket.
Right.
All right, they've shot them at least. But once you get into Earth orbit, then you're in better position to go to places like Mars. Well, the goal right now is to, number one, go to the moon to stay. Not just go to the moon to take a few rocks and moon, but go to the moon and set up a colony and stay there. The other goal is to get an asteroid and drag this asteroid into Earth orbit and use that asteroid as a space station. Basically hollow out the asteroid, live in deep inside it, because the radiation is so bad it takes like 3 feet of rock and metal to protect you from radiation. So you have to somehow tunnel your way inside the asteroid and set up a space station there inside. So that's part of the goal. But the goal is to find ourselves a way to establish a permanent presence in space, to put up permanent space stations, and then start visiting places like the moon and Mars.
Why?
Yes.
Like,
Okay.
I've never understood this
It's
this obsession with
it's
we
called
colonize
partly,
other
all right.
places.
Number one,
In
you can
space.
call it an ego trip. It's a pioneering spirit. And number two, the feeling that it's man's destiny to better himself, to advance, to excel, to exceed, and to explore.
To where we live on Mars.
That is the, believe it or not, you might not be the least bit interested.
I'm not.
I have
because I think
dreamed
it's-
all
I think
my
it's
life
waste
of
time.
going to Mars. I mean, I had, one of my brothers said, I wouldn't go to Mars. I would go if I had a chance.
Do you actually think it's realistic that we'd ever be able to find a way to, I don't know, go like somehow break the laws of the speed of light? Because to me, it just seems like with space, there are going to be
It
some
might
things
be
that we need to
realistic
understand
someday.
that we're never going to be able to get beyond a certain point, because it's just like, you know.
Who knows what the barrier is?
I mean, like.
Well, we can't get to the speed of light, and we kind of need that just to get to places like Jupiter.
With present physics and present knowledge, that's very true. Who knows what we'll learn tomorrow that we don't know today? I personally am in favor of it. I mean, I can see, I've had personally, we need to solve our problems here first.
Yeah.
To feed our poor.
I just think it's
feed
a
our
huge
hungry.
money snake right now.
Solve our poor. Anyway, here you have it. I don't mean to cut you off. What's your question?
I'm just saying, like, we send them up there, then what? And then they're gonna need resources from us, where we don't have no money here on Earth to send them.
There are persons who believe that the moon has some resource, particularly He3, helium-3, that we don't have much of here on Earth, that the moon has in abundance, that could solve a lot of our energy problems. Power automobiles, power energy factories, and also the Titan, Saturn's moon, Titan's moon is just one big ocean of pure raw petroleum or gasoline. Now, how to get that to Earth, I don't know. But the atmosphere is methane. In other words, basically their atmosphere is natural gas, and their oceans are oil. I mean, that's putting it in different terms. Maybe you've heard it, but again, enough of that to last us for who knows how long. And all it is waiting for us to go there, find a cheap way to get it back here, benefit us. In other words, raw materials and minerals we don't have on Earth. I mean, that's what I was saying earlier about trade. Just to make some little simple something like a remote controller for our thing here, takes parts from various parts of the globe. We need it for interdependence. This comes from this continent, that comes from that continent. Someday some of this might come from the moon, and someday some of it might come from Mars. We can make better equipment, better materials than we have here now, with materials that they have out there that we don't have on Earth. That's the hope, that's the goal. All right. Any other comments, questions? I have about 2 or 3 minutes. I want to say this about the American educational system, and I've hit it hard. It was decided to really ramp up and improve our education. We need to get the federal government involved. We're going to be talking about this more later. And American education went one direction when the federal government got involved. Basically, the Soviet Union's education was centralized. It didn't really, it worked, but it wasn't the best. And we decided we'd essentially copy the Soviet Union, and our education is now worse than theirs.
Public
Uh,
education.
What's that?
Public education.
Public education, yeah. Now, again, a whole lot of American parents are now homeschooling their children. It's known that homeschoolers do really well when they grow up and get to college. Homeschooled students and private school students do better than students from public schools. And I've heard more than one talk show person say that any parent who would send his American child to an American public school is guilty of child abuse.
I'm sure they went to public school.
All right. Oh, listen, I did, but they worked better then than they do now. Hey, and I taught it. I graduated from high school in 1967, went back to teaching in 1972, and I was appalled that the change had occurred. Well, I went back first to my old high school, and we had a dress code. The girls dressed, always wearing dresses, and the boys were not allowed to wear beards and had to keep their hair trimmed. Went back and saw boys with long, long hair and kids with ragged blue jeans, faded blue jeans, and actually dirty and hair that was unkempt and
Where are you
uncombed.
from? Is this in Georgia?
Middletown, Ohio.
Oh.
Yeah, and I said to my
then you guys
your
should
brothers,
be-
are they allowed to do that? He looked at me like I was something strange. But the deportment went down with the dress codes. It's known that dress codes do, in fact, the higher the student's dress, the higher their academic achievement. All right, I see one head nodding.
No,
The worse this is not necessarily true, but the worse the student's dress, this is true in grades K through 12, the worse their academic achievement.